Hands together. Give them a nice welcome up here on this main stage here at the Progressive Parlor.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. Grease and Gears Garage. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at all 7 shows, and what we're doing is Cycle Source, Grease and Gears Garage have put together an opportunity for us just to hang out in a garage, talk with some guys about how we're working on our bikes. Unfortunately, Sam Joaquin was going to be up here from Ride Right to lace a wheel for us. He had something come up right at the last minute, but don't be afraid. We got some great guys. We're going to get them in and out because these guys right now are supposed to be selling stuff in their booth. We got a great group of guys here. Mark from Hudson Motorcycles, a local shop here, is going to talk to us about his race bike and his race team and how you build a race bike. But before we get to that, we got Corey and Steve from Nomar. I happen to be a customer of theirs. I bought one of their machines. I was so impressed with it. It's in my shop, Sin Central Garage. Corey and Steve, tell me what you got. Do you have a mic? You don't have your mic yet. I got to get you a microphone. Tell us about Nomar and why people would want to be able to use Nomar, and then I guess you're going to have Corey help us out, figure out how to actually use it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for having us here today. Nomar tire changers are the easy alternative to change your own tires instead of taking it in to your local shop. Sorry about that. But it's remarkably easy. It's safe. You'll never scratch a wheel again. There's no excuses anymore. If you bring your bike in and they scratch your wheel, there is no excuses for that. Because this tire changer is under $600 today, and it's going to last a lifetime. No metal ever touches the wheel. We are from St. Louis, Missouri. We manufacture these in the United States. It's one of the last United States-made products. We take a lot of pride in what we do. All the parts are machined. All the people who build these ride motorcycles, so we understand. We have several models and several brands. We're distributed globally. We also operate in Australia. This is our classic model that we're demonstrating here at the show today, and it grips a 10 to 21 inch wheel. It'll change every tire on every motorcycle made in this building. You have some different customs, some giant 23s or 33-inch wheels. We have tire machines to do that. We also have tire machines to do cars and exotics. All of our tools are carbon fiber safe and very easy to use. So we're going to show you today the basics on how to change a tire. A lot of people, it's a mystery how you do this. So they remain apprehensive to do their own work. And a lot of shops make a lot of money this way. And, it's the bread and butter of many shops, changing tires. And
truly, a lot of shops today, like for my shop, if you bring me a tire, I won't mount it because I don't know where the tire came from, and it creates liability for my shop. And so, you go to a shop, you're going to have to buy the tire. So if you already have a tire, honestly, I encourage all of my customers, do as much as you can. And so, I love to sell stuff, but I like them to know how to do stuff. So this is amazing.
If you own a Nomar tire changer, you're going to make all the friends you never wanted.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're going to teach you today the basics on how to change a tire. What we have is a Ducati wheel up here. It's a sport bike tire. Other variations, the wheels, Harleys, tires with tubes, knobbies, dirt bikes, ATVs, all have the same concept. You lube the wheel the same. You lube the tire the same. The tools are basically the same that are going to take every tire and wheel and swap it out. And usually it's going to take under 2 minutes to change the tire, and you're going to spend more time taking the wheel off the bike and cleaning the bike than you are actually changing the mount and balancing the tire. After we show you how to change a tire, we're going to show you how to balance a wheel. It's also very simple. There are some products out there that we do not endorse. Certain products that go in tires that the tire manufacturers will not warranty that tire. Certain beads and goos and slimes, they are not as accurate as actually using wheel weights. If those other products actually work, they'd use them in racing, and they don't. So anyway, we're gonna show you. Corey's gonna show you how to break the bead. So the first part of changing every tire is breaking the bead. So you're gonna let the air out, and generally you unscrew the valve core or cut off the old rubber stem. So we're going to lay the tire down on our machine. The black blocks are used as a press plating, so the bottom of your wheel is safe. You don't need to use any pads or blocks or rubber. We have a non-marring scratch-proof bead breaker. It's all polyethylene, also carbon fiber safe. Flip your wheel over, break the bead on the other side. Make sure it's completely loose. And then you are ready to lock the wheel in. We have a patented special system of dog blocks and locking cam. They clamp the wheel. They cannot over-clamp a carbon fiber wheel. You push the wheel into the blocks, and you turn the cam with no tools. So if you're working on a Harley or a dirt bike or an ATV, we do have another accessory that drops in place of the blocks. I don't have up here on stage, but it's called our posi clamps. They work very well. So our mount demount bar is patented. It's also got polyethylene tips, so no metal ever touches the wheel. The bar is ergonomic, passes over rotors, passes over the wheel. Taking off the second half is similar as the top. Always keep that non-marring tip on the top edge of the rim. And now half the work is done. So we have a tire lube paste that was voted the best tire lube by Motorcycle Consumer News. It's sold all over the world. You're going to wipe that in the drop center. A lot of people don't ever learn how to lube a wheel. They see a bunch of swabs and wetness moving all around the wheel when they see their car tire changed. But specifically, you want to get the lube in the drop center, which is the valley in the middle. You don't put any lube where the bead seats. If you do that, your tire could slip and you could lose your balance. You're also going to lube the top face of the rim. You're going to lube the inside of the tire where you don't see it. A lot of people think, I got to lube the outside. No, you lube the inside. You're going to save yourself a lot of effort. By doing this, we're lubing the mating surfaces of the tire and the wheel. So now we can just simply push the first half of the tire on.
It also keeps your hands nice and soft, doesn't it? Yes.
It's not for internal use. The mount and demount bar passes over rotors. The two-prong end snaps in. Our yellow thing tool is very popular. It's a tool used by many shops for power machines, spoons, manual changers like this. We manufacture those in St. Louis. The bar is ergonomic. You actually push it with your hip, which allows your hands free to squash the tire down. Puts your body in a great position to work. You're not bent over. You're not on the floor. You're not cussing. You're not sweating, hopefully. And it's going to go that easy. So, your tire's on. You just saved about $50 in about an hour at a time at least going to your local shop.
And Mark from Hudson just said we use one of those at our shop, too.
You know, I go all over.
It's the secret's out now. So.
I travel all over the world, and I'm really pleased to see when I peek in doors and windows, seeing the No More Tire machines in there. I mean, they simply work. They last a long time. We've been doing this about 14 years. And this was all designed by myself so that a guy in race leathers could change tires without getting on the ground fast. So it's early on, we would go to track days and race events and do free tire service. And between two people, we could flip rain tires and balance them and get them back to the racer in 60 seconds.
Wow.
So it's crazy once you know what you're doing with this, how fast it actually is. We've had tire change races at shows like this. I think my record was 18 seconds changing a big Harley 250 tire.
You want a job?
If you know what you're doing, you're going to make money. You're going to save money. You're going to save a bunch of time, and you'll be happier in the long run. You keep your wheels perfect forever, never scratch them. So anyway, if we had an air compressor here, we'd air this thing up, but we don't. So we have a wheel set up on the balancer. So we're going to show you how to balance the wheel. So you want to always have the bead seated before you start to balance the wheel. And what that means is that the tire is inflated and it pops all the way around. And then you can actually spin it and see if it's not seated, it'll be wobbly or hoppy or something like that. Our system offers different cones that slide into the axis or bearing or open hub wheel. And what you do is you let the heavy spot sink by gravity. It's very simple. There's no spinning involved. Gravity is going to take care of it for you. The device is sensitive and accurate to a 32nd of an ounce. It's more accurate than a power machine. That's why they use it in top road racing. So once you know that the heavy spot is on the bottom, the light spot's on top, and that's where the weight goes. We have a lot of people say, well, I guess I just have to guess. Well, you're kind of guessing, but if you look at how much weight came off the wheel, it's probably going to take close to that amount. If the wheel sinks really fast, you know it's going to take a lot. So we have, on this spoke wheel, we have graduated weights. We manufacture these as well. They're brass and chrome plated. They're beautiful. They're reusable. It's a green product. So you can put a test weight on. It's kind of like a seesaw. So if the weight goes down, you got too much. If the wheel went up, you'd have to add. When it doesn't move, it's balanced. So you adjust the weight. If it's a sticky weight, you can just stick the sticky weight on the edge. And it's interesting. People will split hairs balancing wheels with these devices. And BMW factory actually has a tolerance on their wheels of 1.5 ounces. So they say if you're within 1.5 ounces, it's good. So we can achieve a 32nd of an ounce of tolerance. So you can check your work. Once you think you got the right weight, you can rotate that wheel to any point, and it's not going to move. If it moves really slow, it's still perfect. Well, that's the basics, changing tires and,
all right,
and balancing them. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's easy to do. Under $800, you can be set up and
you can have all the new friends you want that you never knew that wanted to be your friend. So there you go. Well, Steve and Corey, thank you so much. Good information.
Thanks for having us.
These guys, where are you set up? What are you next to?
We are dead center of the small vendor area.
Small vendor area. All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys being here with us today. And thanks for the product. We both use it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the other fellow I've got up here today is a good friend of mine, Mark. And Mark has a local shop. Mark, where's your shop at?
Gardena, California.
Okay. And you guys, I know that in the J&P Cycles Ultimate Builder Custom Bike Show, you guys have had bikes in that before, and you've won that show. They've been very successful all over the place. You've got a big shop, and you did that with a Harley Road King. But you guys work on absolutely everything. But the most exciting thing that you kind of got, these guys are down and out of business if they don't get this off the stage. So excuse us. But you guys, the most exciting thing that you've started is a race team out of your shop, and you're actually building the bikes, building the engines. Tell me kind of about what the difference is about race bike building, and then tell me how your engines and your bikes are doing right now in the series that you're racing in.
Well, the race bikes, we start with a stock platform. Anything that you see here on the showroom floor from any one of the manufacturers, this is a specific 2017 R1. Stock platform, take it down, and you never know you had so much parts to put on Craigslist and eBay when you're done with it, because pretty much 90% of the bike comes apart besides the frame, the chassis. That's pretty much what kind of stays stock, your frame. Swing arm has some modifications. We do go with an upgraded swing arm when we're done with it. The wheels change, suspension and all. Starting with a platform, our motors are completely torn down. We have certain specifications that we look at when we're building our race bikes. Certain things that we want to achieve, like tolerances and clearances that necessarily don't come out of a stock build. Our cases, our cranks are all stock. We run stock pistons as well within our class in the Moto America series. So taking a race bike from inception from the OEM and then taking it to where it's at now takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sponsors, a lot of people behind the wheel that get behind it and actually go through it. Our suspensions get changed. We have a lot of telemetry, a lot of sensors on the bike that give us data feedback, a lot of wiring. The wiring harnesses all get replaced. So we kind of start from a stock platform and go to basically a whole new setup and try to achieve a whole different platform.
And you guys actually, you're a privateer team, and so which means that, you're not sponsored by any of the OEMs, and but you've had some great success, and you've kind of surprised some of the OEM teams.
Yeah, so we all started this last year in the beginning of the year as just a sponsor, and as we were just a sponsor and helping out, we stepped into the race performance aspect of it because there was a need for a rider who actually was in an unfortunate situation with his sponsors. So we stepped in with 4 weeks to build a bike and get it ready for the race season for the next upcoming 4 races. We stepped in. It was 4 weeks of long nights and long days. We flew in our teams scattered across the country, and we put it together within 4 races. We were happy to achieve some great success, having only to ride the bike for an hour before our first race. We were able to finish that race in 6th position, which was good for us in our class. By the time that we were all said and done and the series was over, we were running 3rd to 4th fastest trap times up with the Superbike guy level. So after we were done with that, we decided that next year we're going to go Superbike racing, which is a whole another sleepless year in itself. But putting that program together now has been interesting. As you can see, the motor's not in the bike now. We're currently going through a lot of R&D process with what we want and where we want to be at. We dyno at Hudson in-house, so we keep everything in-house as a privateer team. It's an interesting program doing it as a privateer, but we're happy. We just finished a race out in Buttonwillow, and we were able to set a track record there. So we own the track record at Buttonwillow with Bryce, who's our racer. We're happy to do that. It's a testament to our team because Buttonwillow's been there for a really long time.
Yeah.
Now we own that. So.
Well, it's just great to see a privateer team. I mean, these are guys like you and I in their garage, in their shop that have just said, hey, man, we're going to go race against the big boys. And they actually you've had some of the OEM race teams come and say, how are you tuning that bike? What are you doing? They wanted you to share that information, and you were like, "We're beating you. Why would we share our information?" And you kind of were a bad word. I can't say it on stage, but you kind of a butt about it. You're an ass about it, basically.
We're not beating anybody yet. I'll be clear and honest. But what we are doing is we're turning eyebrows. And from a family-owned business with me and my brother, who started this 8 years ago. We've been motorcycle savvies for a long time, but Hudson's been only around for 8 years. And we did it to give back to the motorcycle community, to be that alternative to the big box. And, we're turning some heads. We're looking forward to this upcoming year. We're talking with a lot of sponsors. A lot of people want to be on board. We'll be on TV, BIN Network for Moto America. That's something that we're looking forward to. And, Pat's a good buddy of mine. I appreciate the opportunity. Nomar makes a good product. J&P Cycles is a great avenue for parts and stuff like that. Progressive's great. Everybody that's put this whole thing together has been really good, and we're fortunate just to have this opportunity and to present our program, our shop, and hopefully next year when we're up here, we'll have a couple of trophies to go with it because that's what we're aiming for.
Right on. And as he keeps reminding me every time I talk to him, a couple more sponsors. So anybody that's out there that's looking to put a name on a shirt or a bike and get some great TV time, you're going to be able to do it. And I think that you guys are going to have a great season. You guys are committed, and you guys are brilliant, really. So good luck with that. And thanks for being with us on Grease and Gears Garage, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
They're here selling too, so they're going to get this bike off the stage. And Chris, who do we have? There's got a guy.
Oh, the next segment's going to be great, but I need you guys to come down and get a seat for this because a vintage motorcycle top end, vintage Indian top end. We're going to go through that here. I got some free stuff. Anybody wants to come down? I got a Grease and Gears Garage shirt if you want to come and hang out with us. Nobody? Come on. I know it's early, but this is Long Beach, right? Long Beach, you guys with us here today on the Grease and Gears Garage stage?
Yeah, they should. You guys should have been.
How about
You
buddy?
guys
You
haven't even
want
gone to
shop
bed
rag?
yet.
Come
It
on
was
up here.
Friday night in California. You should have been partying all night,
Put
man.
that
That's
in
what
your
we
pocket
expect.
when you're adjusting your spokes. You don't have to have dirty hands.
There you go, buddy. Dirty
You're young
hands.
enough, yeah,
My
there you
hands
go.
are clean to death. I've been out of the shop
There's
for
a shop.
2 days.
You want a shop rag, kiddo? Come on over here. I got one more shirt back here I'll throw out to you guys. We got an exciting day here on the Grease and Gears Garage stage. Chris Richardson's going to be up here later. He's coming up to narrow a fuel tank. Anybody want a shop rag?
We're actually even going to be interviewing Chris Richardson before he gets up
you
here.
are,
We're going to
sir.
have Jeff Holt from Hot Bike
There
Magazine
you go.
and Chris Richardson up here.
Thank
We're going to
you,
be
sir.
doing a little talking with him. Chris is a great local guy, man, super builder.
Absolutely. Later on, Renee, my boy Primo, is coming on this stage. He's going to show you how to hook up a helmet. You had that helmet, man, that makes your head look like kazoo. You wish it wasn't so big. He takes the liner out of the inside of that. Not only makes it fit better and proper and bring it down on your head, but he'll put anything on the inside of the helmet. He's going to do one of those live here today and show you how it goes down.
I mean, you'll take your helmet off. You can have a picture of a pinup in there. You can have it all done in plush gold velour. I mean, that man, he can do anything.
Dude, I went straight West Coast. I got the Virgin Mary inside there.
Virgin Mary right up in there. You can put your mom's picture in there if you want to. Who knows? Maybe she's the pinup you got in there. That's a little weird, but it's your helmet. I don't care what you do.
But all day long, man, we're bringing this stuff to you Facebook Live. You can check out the schedule. I'm going to turn it back over to Pat. I'm Chris from Cycle Source Magazine, Grease and Gears Garage. Stick around.
Appreciate it, Chris. We got Kiwi Mike coming up next, don't we? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the motorcycle world is full of all kinds of cool, rad people. But one of the coolest guys is, and I tell you what, you can't get a more tried and true American than this guy, even though he's going to talk funny. We got Kiwi Mike from Kiwi Motorcycles. He is all about Indians. He's a cat from New Zealand. He talks funny.
Maybe.
He's always
Yeah, we
saying,
got a
"Mate,"
special
and whatnot.
guest.
Oh, my God, it's Jeff Holt from Hot Bike Magazine.
Hello, people.
Dropping in on Grease and Gears Garage. How are you, brother?
I just wanted to say good morning to Chris, and he threw me up on stage.
And he threw you up on stage. There you go. Hey, man, you and I actually last night, we got to get this out in public.
Yes.
We were at a party last night, and we didn't even party hard.
No, we did not party that hard.
We did a real good
Well,
job.
I was kind of drunk before you got there, so.
Yeah, so I did a really good job last night. But I understand Atomic Bob gave you a ride home last night.
Yes, he did.
He was your Uber.
He was my guy, man.
Ubered
Thank
you up
God.
last night.
He's
So
a good dude.
What are you doing here?
Oh, I'm doing everything here. No,
All
I
right.
came to hang out, and I'm judging the bike contest, and
All right.
we have a couple awards that I'm handing out, a hot bike award, and then what's more fun is a tortilla award.
A tortilla award. Oh, that's got to be from Colorado.
Of course. Kind of the deal being with the Tortilla Award, it's kind of my favorite bike that doesn't really have or do anything special. It's just something that I really like comparatively, maybe
Right.
something with not all that flamboyance and not all that crazy craftsmanship involved, but just something cool. So it'll be pretty exciting to see that.
Now, the tortillas have to be from Nikki and Roy's
Yes.
Toys Customs out of
Definitely.
Colorado.
Definitely.
They've got a bike here. I think. Don't they have a
No,
bike?
they don't have a bike
They don't
here.
have a bike
They
here?
came out to hang out, but they're going to have a bike at most of the other
I
IMS
thought
shows.
so, yeah. So, but and real talented. Nikki had a bike in Michael Lichter's exhibit at the Buffalo Chip this year.
Yeah, Sturgis is
that was
35, age 35 and under.
Yeah, young bloods.
Young bloods, yeah.
Young bloods. Old iron. young
And guess
bloods.
what?
What?
I'm building a bike for the Lichter Show this year.
Are you really?
Yeah, and I believe Chris Cowan is as well.
Look at that.
Yeah, so it'll be cool.
What's the show this year?
The show this year is people that build bikes on a regular basis, but it's not their day job.
Right on.
And
So-
Chris and I are far too busy typing into the computer to be full-time builders. No, we don't make any more money.
Don't make any money yet. Well, hell, I should be in that show too. I have a shop and I build bikes, but I don't make any money at it either.
Exactly.
So, but
very,
no, that's
very
good.
few people.
That's
make,
exciting.
Speaking of this amazing stuff, this guy makes good money and good bikes and
This
everything
guy,
else.
he's
man.
rich. Yeah, this guy's got almost
Rich
as much.
in the heart.
He's got almost as much money as Bill Dodge. So, Kiwi, come on up, man. Let's chit chat with you. Kiwi is a guy that Jeff and I have known for a long time. He's been around forever, but it's mostly because he's old. But he also works on old stuff.
Yes.
He was one of the original mechanics with Indian Motorcycle in 1904. How's it going, man? Good, mate. And But Kiwi is just loves Indian motorcycles.
Yes.
And I'm sure he's got opinions about the new ones, but he is specifically involved with old Indians. And so today he's going to be up here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of his travels, but we're also he's going to build a top end for a vintage Indian motorcycle right
And he's
here.
going to do it blindfolded.
So what is that? That
Maybe
looks
not.
like a gynecological tool. What is this? I like
You would know.
Right, ladies, stay in the back. So now, Kiwi,
Yes.
you talk funny. You say mate a lot. Where are you from?
New Zealand originally. That was like 35 years ago.
35 years ago, and you still have the
So
accent.
how many people ask you per day if you're from Australia?
There's a few.
Do you punch them? Or you just give
No,
them?
no, I just tell them there's one problem with Australia. It's full of Australians.
Exactly.
But Kiwi was, we were sitting this morning at breakfast, and he was telling me about when he came to the United States. He said, you can't be an American and wave another flag. When he came and took his oath for citizenship, he said, well, tell me what you tell me. Tell them what you told me this morning.
Well, it's when the swearing-in process, you pledge allegiance to the flag, and I don't believe that you can pledge allegiance to two flags. You know, you go through all the oath, and you're there. It's official, and you're pledging allegiance to the flag, the American flag. So my belief is that's what you're pledging allegiance to. You can't be a nationality of two countries. It's one. I mean, that's why, you're here.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
we
think-
like you here. It's good.
So yeah, I mean, and
Yes.
some of us take it for granted, but you actually chose this, and so I love how seriously though you take your patriotism to the United States of America. I mean, you go home and visit New Zealand, but you're an American.
Yep.
And I just love that. So
Yeah,
it's
that's awesome.
great. And you've been able to come here as an immigrant and do fantastic in terms of business and really be successful and live out that American dream. So that's really
Yeah, there's
awesome.
one
Yeah.
little part that wasn't right on your introduction thing. Like, I make a lot of money, but
None of us do.
Bill and I would be on the same level.
Oh, Bill, yeah. Well, I tell people Bill's a millionaire.
I mean,
Hey, doing what you love is
that's
makes you
it.
rich.
There's
Foremost,
people that
you know.
make a lot of money in their job, and they don't really enjoy their job. We're able to make some money. It's a huge investment, especially doing Indian motorcycles. You're putting all your capital back into your product, but you're able to carve out a living. You're around the coolest people, the coolest, just everything.
doing what you love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and a lot of people, I'm sure, might think, doing a vintage Indian, I don't have the time to go look for all the parts. I don't have time to do all that.
You can't find most of the parts.
Yeah, you can't find most of the parts. And so,
That's why.
product placement.
Kiwi Indian
You actually
catalog.
reproduce.
just one phone call, one email. I
You
got
can
it.
build an Indian motor and a vintage Indian bike
That's
out of
right.
one
That's right.
catalog.
Yep.
I mean, you seriously can. You can build a vintage bike, and Kiwi Mike's got all the parts for you. So, and this is a picture here we got. These are the motors that you build out of there.
Yes.
So it's like an assembly line there.
I wouldn't call it that, but that looks good.
Amazing.
It looks like an assembly line. So, and here you are. Look at you. That was a younger you, I think. You snuck in a picture.
That was last week.
Yeah.
That was a few years
couple of
ago.
weeks ago.
And where is your facility?
I'm in Riverside, California.
Riverside, California. You got a house and a shop on an acre there.
Yep.
And the people that live in California, it'll piss you off to know that he's been there so long, 35 years, right?
Yep.
He's been there so long, his property taxes are next to nothing. He pays virtually nothing in property tax because of how long he's been there. He got grandfathered in, so
That's how you make money in California.
that's how you make money in California. You have to have gotten here 100 years ago. But now, what's different about these motors than other vintage motors like the Harley motor that you'd run into?
Well, I don't know a whole bunch about Harleys, but what I've done is I've re-engineered the motor where I don't like oil leaks. So that's one of my pet peeves. So my trade is engine building. So I understand all the internals and how it's supposed to work. And that's why I've addressed everything externally on my motors looks original. But on the inside, that's where all the difference is. It's all on the inside. Because when you're dealing with vintage guys, it's appearance that it has to look like the original thing.
Right. So you're really I do hot rods at the shop, in Iowa, and we do what we call resto mods. Like my 62 Caddy has a Corvette motor in it, so on the outside it looks like a 62 Caddy, but underneath it's all nice and modern and functions better. This is kind of what you're doing. You're resto modding it, and you're giving it a little bit of modern update so that you can, so they're a little more reliable.
A lot more reliable. I mean, Indians were reliable anyway, and they're a good performance-based engine in terms of a flathead. Like the Harley flathead's a bit of a dog, but I mean the Indian will run.
Because you race these. I mean, like here's a picture of you on one of your bikes. Just
that was an illegal.
That was illegal?
Yeah,
we probably shouldn't have that picture there. It was a good picture.
And you ride these things all over the world.
All over.
I mean, if you want to see some good stuff, follow his Instagram because he is
that's
always out there riding and testing these products.
You ride through Death Valley. You're famous for your Death Valley rides. And I don't know if we have a picture of it. Oh, here it is. That thermometer, if you can't see it, 140 degrees it's approaching there. The fuel in your gas tank was actually boiling.
Yeah.
Heather Callan has a video of the fuel in the gas tank boiling. And you're riding through Death Valley. And with Chris Callan from Cycle Source on a modern, what kind of bike was he on?
Harley.
A Harley Davidson. And you were on a vintage Indian.
1948 Indian.
And what did you have to do for Chris?
His rear belt broke.
And you gave him a ride.
I had to give him and Heather a ride on it. So my trusty old 1948.
And is this the bike? Is that the bike there?
No, that was a red one.
That was a different one. These are just pretty shots of you being famous.
Great bikes.
But I saw a picture of Chris on the back of your bike, and he was looking sad and bedraggled and hot. And he's riding on this vintage Indian on the back, looking like the ugliest, fattest girlfriend he's ever had.
It's dangerous out there. I mean, that was one of the hottest days they've had out there. I think the hottest day was 134 degrees. Officially, it was 129.9 degrees.
Wow, that is hot. And he's riding a vintage bike. I don't know that I'd put many of my modern bikes out there and do that. And I'm not sure I'm not going to put my fat ass.
I have confidence in my product. I like to do product testing. That's what separates me out from everybody else, is getting out there and doing it.
You actually do it. So now. When you don't just do the parts, though. People from all over the world send you their bikes, and you actually will build a complete bike for people too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot of restorations, resto mods, a lot of my replica bikes as well, and then we've got our parts line of probably about 1,500 different part numbers to go worldwide.
I mean, you're really famous for that front end. That's
the leaf spring front end.
The leaf spring front end. For a while, every chopper build had that on there, and you still see them a lot, and that's really cool, man. I've seen them on new Scouts. I've seen them, everything. It's
and I'm sure cool. we don't. There's a picture of one of those there. That leaf spring front end, man. He sells those. Yeah, it's awesome. He sells those like crazy. And so now, if you're going to put that leaf spring front end, say I'm building a little bobber. Next stem.
Actually, I built it for the Harley guys. So I put a 1-inch stem in it. So it's already set up. The leaf pack is already adjusted for that. So I actually primarily went out the gate for the custom guys.
Because you felt sorry for the Harley guys because they had to run that engine. And so if they weren't going to ride an Indian, at least they were pointed in the right direction.
Well, I just take that dirty Harley money and pilfer it. I'm like a cleansing service.
So you laundered the dirty Harley money.
Money.
I hear you, man.
I mean, Indian money, sorry.
I hear you. All right, now what you got for us today, you're going to build the top end of one of these Indian flatheads. So what have you got? What's sitting on the bench today?
Well, I'm not quite ready yet, but...
You're not ready yet?
Yes.
No problem.
All right, you've been here.
We could talk about our feelings.
We could talk about our feelings.
I don't have any feelings.
Mike, he's a superstar. He's a rock star in the motorcycle business. You can tell because he slept on a couch last night.
Cycle Source couch.
Cycle Source couch last night. He crashed with us. So Hot Bike was in the hotel, so we were.
Yeah, we got a suite over here. I'm old. My bones are just. I need a nice.
You got Maggie with you too. She's not gonna.
Yeah. Maggie's not going to.
I don't like that. You and I usually crash together and run.
I know. Well, we'll do it the rest of the year.
We snore in harmony.
It's like nothing you've ever heard.
Oh man, Jeff and I. It's funny, we go to all the shows and we're always doing stuff, and I got a shop and build bikes, and for the longest time I was with Progressive, and so people saw me every place, and we're at every rally, everything. People are like, "Oh man, you guys have great lives. It must be rock star." Jeff and I shared a room in New York that was so small I've got a size 12 foot. He's got a
I got
size
a size 11.
We couldn't put our feet between the beds. And a cat named Kyle Shorey.
And it was in Hell's Kitchen.
Hell's Kitchen. And so the beds, it's like we're sleeping in one great big bed together. And Kyle Shorey from Shade Tree Fabrication from Roanoke, Texas, another great builder. Yep. He didn't have a room, so he slept with us. He couldn't sleep.
He had to call his wife so she could send him money so he could get a hotel room.
Get a hotel room because we were snoring so loud. He was like, people on both sides of us were
It's
trying
like
to
a
move.
bear in a dragster with a chainsaw.
Yeah,
That's about as close as you can get.
Yeah, we make the perfect roommates because we sleep like babies. We don't even hear it. We don't even hear it.
All right, I'm going to bow out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Watch you guys do your stuff on the other side,
man.
and then I'll be back with Chris.
Sounds good. Yeah, Chris, you're back with Chris Richardson and going to be interviewing him for us. So great,
No
man.
problem.
Appreciate you being around.
Thanks,
Jeff.
guys.
Thanks, man. Thanks
See
for
ya.
coming up and sharing. Are you ready now?
Yeah, I'm sort of ready.
Oh, man.
Damn. But our time slot moved up, so things are.
I know. We surprised
It's all good.
you.
It's all good. So what we're going to go through today is rebuilding a top end of an all-Indian or Harley Flathead, for that matter. The old Flatheads have got some characteristic issues that overhead, like your modern overhead valve engines, don't have. One is they retain a lot of heat, so the parts have to be super, super good. And on the valves and guides, there's a lack of lubrication problem. So, the stuff has to be extremely good. You can get away with things in an overhead valve. There's things you can't get away with in a old Flathead. So one of the things is there's reproduction cylinders on the market, but and this is really applicable to both Indian and Harley. So it's not specific to just Indian, but cast irons have a wide range from a bottom end cast iron, which is intake manifolds, sewer pipe covers, water pipe covers, to real high end, which is your automotive grade. So cast iron, just because it's made of cast iron, doesn't mean it's a good grade of cast iron. So you have to really get into the good grades of cast iron. So that's one of the things you have to be careful of with the reproduction stuff, is getting into good stuff. So.
Does that ever depend on what country it's made in?
Not necessarily.
I mean, is there a particular thing you should look for? I mean,
it's really the manufacturer. Most of these people that do reproduction stuff, my trade is engine building. So that's what I left school. That's my specialty, my trade. So I know the environment that the parts that are running, where others here make this. How cheap can you make it?
right.
So you have to specify the alloy that you're making it, and you have to qualify it by doing metallurgical analysis. You know, it's only less than $100. Usually you chop a piece of that off if you're manufacturing and send it in and have it metallurgically analyzed. But a lot of people don't want to spend the $100.
Right.
Or they want it cheap. So
otherwise they just don't care.
Yeah, we see a lot of stuff coming in from China and India, and it really is, it's shoddy. It's good for my business because people bring their stuff in for me to fix.
Right.
But it's just a shame that they've already spent money elsewhere. And it's like anything, you know, you can for your tools or your faucet at your house, you can buy a good faucet that's going to last you a long time, or you can buy a cheap one that is going to have a problem down the road, or you're playing Russian roulette. So, and your parts for your motorcycles are the same way.
Okay.
So one of the first things is prep. Like this is the intake manifold nipple. These, I automatically take it out of even the new ones I make. I take them out and we reseal these. So, you know, you can put Loctite's got a lot of wonderful products. You can use those and then screw the new one in. And it's actually got to be staked. Once it's in there, you've got your Loctite on it, you get it tight. And this is what the intake manifold bolts onto. So in order to...
So you're going to want a red Loctite that.
I get into the greens.
Oh, okay.
So I want it sealing, and I don't want it to come out.
You don't want it to come out. Okay, so
But
you go green.
at the same time, I put a dowel pin. There's a little dowel pin that goes in here. So actually drill a dowel pin hole. It's an 1/8 inch hole that goes all the way through, and it'll actually lock
It's got a set screw in there. You're gonna.
It's actually a Delta.
Oh, you just dry it? You tap it in.
Yeah, you've actually got to tap it in.
You tap it in. All right.
And we put a spud in here, and it's old-fashioned riveting. You've got to do it, otherwise the thing is going to come out.
All right.
So prep. If you don't do that, then you could be chasing around an air leak, which means your engine's going to run lean and it's going to get hot and you're going to take out top ends. So air leaks are not your friend. So valve guides. There's different quality valve guides. Actually, this is a very, very poor quality valve guide. It's real soft. You can actually run an easy test. I mean, if you don't have sophisticated equipment, is to get a file and just run over it. And if it just hits it like mild steel and moves it, that's bad in a flathead. So
it's not unlike what you do if you ever watch TV, Forged in Fire. Bladesmiths do that. You know, you just run a file over it. If it slides, it's hard. If it doesn't, it's.
I've got Rockwell testers, but I mean that's thousands of dollars, and most people don't have that.
Right.
So the easiest thing to do is just the cheap fix is a good file. Just run it over it. If it marks it, removes a lot of metal easily, toss it. You get into the valve guides. I've actually got a little radius on it. Like this one here is a sharp point on it. I don't know if it's sort of hard to see that if it showed up. But what happens is it's got a sharp edge on the inside diameter. It's actually going to, any oil that does get there, it's going to want to shave it off. So by having a radius in it, it's like a funnel. It's leading it in. And it's not just shaving on the side of the valve.
Okay.
So that's important. Valve material is super important. Once again, you get into a lot of, I think that one's a Chinese one. You can get into India and China. Most of the stuff you see is from India and China. I'm not saying it's all, for Indian stuff, most of it is bad. They just don't have that quality control, the people that are importing it. But the valve is a very, it looks just shiny. You look at this one and you look at a cheap one, they both look the same.
Right.
But actually there's a lot of technology in that valve. People just say it's stainless steel. What grade of stainless steel it is?
Right.
We use 21-4N, which is exhaust material. It's expensive. The nickel, it's got nickel in it. Nickel, the higher nickel you go, the more it costs. Then you put a hard chroming over it. Now others sell a stainless valve, hard chrome stem, but it's on so thin that once it rubs up and down there for a few miles, then it comes off. So you want the really deep hard chrome. Then it's got a wafer tip on it, which is actually right on the end, and it blends in. It's about a 16th wide. And now that, you've got the tappet down here, hitting up against that. You've got your 4 or 6 thousandths clearance, and this is actually banging up against it. Well, you need wear resistance. So that's where the hardened carbide wafer tip comes into play. Now, it's not something you can see, but you pull up that valve, and that's a $30 valve, and then somebody else comes along, my competitors show a $20 valve.
Right.
I know which one's going to last a lot longer. You will not be replacing this one. So, it's one of those things that it's hard to educate people on all this.
Quality does matter when it comes to engine parts.
Really
Quality
does.
matters. I mean, or you'll just be redoing it constantly.
And I see a lot of that. A lot of people on their bikes. Antiques somewhat different than modern bikes, but a lot of guys think, I'm not going to run it. I'm not going to use it much, so I'll just put the cheap stuff in it. But even the cheap stuff, by the time they do their restoration, it could take them 2 to 5 years to restore it. Another maybe 5 years to get a few miles on their bike. So 10 years can go by. And then everybody on the market finds out, well, these things are failing. But it's 10 years of that stuff being saturated all the way across the whole market.
Right.
And that's the killer.
Yeah. So that's why this catalog should be the only one you shop.
That's right. I'm not saying it from a sales point of view.
No, but it's quality parts, know, and so you really have to be able to trust. Do any of you guys have vintage bikes that are out here? Anybody interested in restoring one?
1975 is not vintage, by the way.
Yeah, for him, you got to go way back.
Yeah.
All right, so the valves, make sure that you got good ones. It's going to have great wear resistance, hard chrome. good stainless, tapping on the bottom. Very good.
So, and gaskets are another thing that, once again, I sort of put myself back to a restorer. I've had the advantage of being in the engine business, so I understand how all the different products work and are supposed to work up against each other, mate against each other. But I used to think a gasket is just a gasket. Actually, there's just even a lot of technology just in a gasket.
Right.
So there's different materials, there's different coatings. There's a lot of things that come into play on that. So,
for you guys just joining us, this is Kiwi Mike from Kiwi Motorcycles. We're also doing this Facebook Live for you folks that are out here that are live, and I can actually go and touch you. But so we're face spacing this. But this is Kiwi Mike, and he restores Indian motorcycles, but he also has an incredible parts line, and he's going through how to build the top end on a Flathead motorcycle and talking to us about parts. And we've just gotten up to the point where we're getting ready to talk about gasket quality and how that's important to this process of rebuilding.
So one of the issues on a cylinder-based gasket is we don't have much material down the bottom here. So, and you've got a lot of torque on these bolts. So a cheaper material, once you torque this down, it can actually squish these areas out. So this is actually a foamette material. It's got steel in between it, and then it's got a foam material on each side. And it's not like a modern bike. A modern bike, new bike, everything's nice. The surfaces are nicely machined, whether it be Japanese, European, American. Everything's nice. You haven't had 80 or 100 years of somebody on there removing stuff, chiseling it with a screwdriver, porosity and casting. So it's a different technology when you're dealing with the old stuff. So you've got to overcome some things with just in gasketing. I don't like oil leaks.
Yeah.
So I get into advanced gasketing, and this one here is a foamette material, being steel in the middle, so you can actually crush this, and none of it's going to blow out at any of these points. Plus, any irregularities, sometimes you got an irregularity of one case mating each other, and it might be off just a few thousandths of an inch. Well, that's where the gasket comes in, and it has to take up that.
Right. It's a real temptation just to buy gasket material. When I was growing up in North Carolina, man, we never bought a gasket.
Oh, yeah.
We just made all of our own.
Yeah.
But and we had oil leaks because that would squeeze and it would push out. So, yeah, spending a little extra on getting a good gasket is going to be worth it in the long run because you're going to ruin a bunch of pants and you're just going to be cleaning the bike all the time.
Yeah, I remember doing a road run in Colorado, and I rode my 1945 Chief. Rode it from here, Sacramento, and then across to Colorado. And I got there, and the first day of the road run, guys are asking me, hey, what do you clean your bike with? And I said, I didn't. How come this? Yeah, you got to clean it with something. I said, no. I said, as a matter of fact, I didn't clean it from the previous ride. Well, how do you keep it so clean? I said, it's all in the gasketing and building of the engine and paying attention to all the gasket surfaces. Yeah,
so I think some guys, when they're riding their vintage bikes or just kind of bikes in general, I think they use it as a way to check their oil. If it's leaking, it's got oil. If it stops leaking, they need to put oil in it. I'm not sure exactly why I've ridden behind guys. I get there, and I'm like, dude, I got oil all over me. Could you service your bike? So.
Yep. So gaskets are important. Head gaskets, there's different materials on head gaskets. This is actually a solid copper one. Actually found that. We upgraded that some years ago on Indians. Prior to that, back in the good old days, you could use asbestos. And that's how the manufacturers got around a lot of things is asbestos back then. Of course, that's tapu. That's bad today.
Yeah.
But it has been for a long time. But asbestos was a beautiful head gasket material. But then you get into the composites, but the composites tend to seal, so settle. So you're always going around and retorquing after 50 miles, 100 miles, 250 miles, 500. You're always attacking it. With solid copper, we've got good conductivity through it as well. But once you put it on there and you cinch it down, you might have to revisit it once, and then you're done. So you can enjoy your antique bike more rather than wrenching on it all the time.
Now, with the copper gasket, Does that help in the middle? Does that help dissipate heat at all? Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
it
got
does.
a better job of transferring
Heat. Okay.
Because in the flathead, we're retaining a lot of
Right.
heat down in this area here. We've got exhaust here. We've got cool air coming in here through the intake. We've got combustion, and then we got hot air, hot gases escaping out through here. So we've got all this mass over here. And with an overhead, you know, all your heat's up here. So it's sort of nice, but we've got it down here. The bad thing about it down here too is we get bore distortion. So with bore distortion, you know, you've got rings around.
Yeah.
And they don't conform to regular shapes. So that's another issue.
Because they're going to be much harder. This is going to distort, but a ring won't.
It will not distort.
Yeah, so.
But this sort of in a flathead sort of goes in the shape of a D. Not ideal. So, you know, it's really challenging for oil consumption. That's the big thing for the oil ring. That's the big thing about, big difference between overhead valves and flatheads. Flatheads will sit there for a stationary engine. You know, you see them in, a lot of farmers have them over the years. You know, they just sit there, they'll idle all day, every day, just year after year and keep on going. They're not a high revving motor. You know, they're good for low-end torque, mid-range, mid to upper, so getting the upper a little bit. But if you're looking for performance, you really got to work it real hard, because what happens is the gas, it has to do a lot of turns. Like an overhead is sort of coming in and straight down the hole. Bang, out it goes. Well, with a flathead, it's got to come through a manifold, do a turn coming in here. It's got to come up through here, across, down into the hole, bang, combustion. Then it's got to go across here, down into the exhaust, and then out here. So it's got a lot of turns.
It's got quite a journey.
It's really the exhaust is under some sort of pressure, but the intake is the one you want as straight a flow as possible, and it's not really a performance flathead. It's almost an oxymoron. But I mean, they're good and reliable.
Yeah.
You build them right. So, and then honing the cylinders, the cylinder finish comes into play. Most cylinders are sort of semi-finished. They're going to be close. So you're going to have to do hone it. Usually I've got to just do a final hone on it and the valve job. The honing operation, we actually, I have a torque plate that these are bolted down to. So it's a 1-inch torque plate, and it simulates it being built, bolted on a set of cases. So actually, once they come out, once they're honed and they come out, they're about half to 1/1000th out around. But once you bolt them back down onto the crankcase, then they're round again.
That's crazy.
Rather than, most people don't have that, so it's round now. When they put it on, then it goes out around.
Okay.
So, so the honing finish you're going to put on it is going to be, the grit stone is going to be what your ring manufacturer recommends. So if you're using whoever rings, you want to use those, you know, work with a ring manufacturer to find out what they're specifying. In your modern engines, your overhead valves, you're dealing with a micro finish. The rings are sort of finer finish. You're in a more controlled environment. With the flatheads, we actually have to take a step back in technology. We go with a rougher surface, and the rougher surface is a lot even just in honing. It's how much oil it retains, especially in break-in. So that's what the crosshatch you see on honing also does. It's ring break-in, but it actually retains what they call boundary lubrication. And that's what's actually lubricating your rings. Especially in break-in. Break-in, you're generating a lot of heat. So once things get broken in, it's actually going to be a cooler running engine.
Right on.
On Indians, we have a 35-degree valve seat angle, and that was actually set something way back in the day. That's not something I come up with. But actually getting into this, that was actually a good performance flow rate. So those old guys back in the...
They knew what they were doing.
Probably I don't even know how far back that goes. Probably teens.
Wow.
Yeah. Carry that on all the way through. And so the more I've got into this, developing stuff, learning about the history, the old engineers, I've actually found out those old engineers knew their shit.
Yeah, they actually, we sometimes discount that, but, I mean, we still use most of their technology. I mean, they came up with good stuff that's lasts.
A lot of people ridicule what they did, but, I mean, that was, I actually give them a lot of credit because it's old. You know, today we got CNC computerized equipment. We're hitting buttons, and things are going to come out at certain points. Back then it was all manual. It sat in a fixture. The guy had to, was no dial indicators. I mean, it was all manual, and it actually had to come in at that point. So I give those old guys a lot of credit, especially when you get into the bottom end stuff, you know, crank pins and flywheels. That's very, very high tolerance. And man, they were right on it.
Yeah. It's impressive what they came up with.
Yeah. On the pistons, I got into redesigning the Indian piston. It actually looks like a modern piston today, but a few years ago, actually, I started this development experimenting back in 1999 on a modern piston. Normally, Indian had 3 rings. There were wide rings, 3 compression rings, and a wide oil ring. And it was...
I'll get it.
It was old... man, you're pretty old. You got to...
Oh, man.
Oh, I should have got that.
This back, man, I ain't bending over. Plus, I can't breathe if I bend over. You know what I mean. You don't tie your shoes either. Stop laughing at me.
There's actually a lot of technology just on that piston. Nobody's ever done this for an Indian motorcycle. I started this development in 1999, and it's probably the single best thing. Actually, it is the single best thing you can do with your Indian. It actually makes it quieter. So I've offset the wrist pin. So a lot of the old pistons were right in the middle, but what happens is when it fires, your connecting rod's on an angle, and the piston wants to cock. So by just offsetting it, that was the trick actually, how much to offset. You go 10, 20, I mean, you don't know. So I started at 30. That didn't do any, that actually worked against me, so I actually settled on 20 thousandths. So under firing, this piston actually stays pretty square in the cylinder coming down, where before it would cock. And you'd actually get piston slap, which translates to noise. In a water-cooled engine, you got water jackets around it, so it's actually acting as a sound deadening device, where on an old Flathead and modern bikes, you don't have that. You know, you got fins, and fins act as a resonator. They just amplify everything. So the quieter we can make these things, the better.
You know, I noticed, and I don't know who else does this. I just built a bike for Royal Enfield, and they have little rubber sleeves that are connected that they put on over the fins. And I got the bike, and I was like, what the hell are these? So I took them off and threw them away. I thought it was like packaging material. So I took them off and threw them away. And I started the bike the first time. I do Harleys mostly, but I build this 70 style chopper. I got that Royal Enfield motor. I crank it up, the 535 out of Continental GT. And I'm like, man, that thing's making a racket. I'm looking at it, my son and I in the shop. I'm like, I don't know what. And so I called my buddy. We were in a biker build off Ron Harris down in Daytona. I said, dude, this thing makes a lot of noise. And he said, yeah, you got, even with the cushions on it. And I was like, the what? He said, those rubber things. I'm like, I threw those away. And he said, why? I thought they were packaging material. But yeah, so they actually, all these motors do. And that's that is an older style motor over there. But now do you use anything like that?
No, I've used it as an experiment, and yes, it does work. The problem I'm dealing with is the vintage guys, that's how it looked originally.
Right, you can't mess with that.
And when you're making these fins, they're actually not like modern day permanent mold stuff. These fins are deep, so they could vary. So you could go out there, you can make it precision for one, but it's not going to fit the next 20.
Right.
So,
it would fit yours that you made.
Yeah.
Because yours are precision.
Yes.
Kiwi Indian. Catalog. 1,500 part numbers. There. Commercial.
There you go.
All right. There we go.
So,
All right, so you made your own, but you designed a modern piston then
Yes.
for the old engine. So that's
It's-
one of the resto mods.
Oil holes lower down, so the actual oil hole itself nicks the bottom land. So what happens is, instead of the oil having to come up and go over the first land of the piston ring, which would be here, so instead of coming up here and having to go over that first land and then go and be returned back into the crankcase, it doesn't have to. It's already doing its job before it gets to that first ring land.
Right. So before, did that even work before with the way they had those two wide rings?
That was common automotive practice back then. I mean,
Right. But did it work? It didn't really work.
It worked, but it's not, one of these.
It's not ideal.
No, it's
Okay.
not ideal. This is just stuff that everybody's learned. It's not my idea. It's what
Yeah.
everybody's learned over
Yeah.
the years. Because in the old days, you'd think, oh my gosh, you've got an interrupted sealing surface. It's not going to work.
So they just put a solid ring around
Yeah.
the whole thing. Yeah.
So the other thing is, for flatheads, you're dealing with a splash feed in the engine. So it's not like the modern engines. It's pressurized oil. It sort of goes into the crank pin, and then the flywheel just throws it everywhere. So your best coating for your pistons is tin coating. It's hard to get done because it's not environmentally friendly. You can, you get into all these other Molly and NASCAR has a whole bunch of surface finishes, which are great, and sort of like silk screened on. But I found that after a few hundred miles, it actually comes off on these old flatheads. It's a good material, but they went that way because it's for environmentally friendly. But for what we're dealing with, you sort of got to balance that. You got to be in functionality on what works, and that's why you tin coat this. And what that does is it acts as a break-in surface, anti-galling. It's not going to pick up, so you're going to have less chance of seizure on that surface. So it's actually like a matte, what do you call it, matte silver,
Right.
versus if it was your just straight aluminum, it's going to be like a polished aluminum.
Now, I do know that, like, on some of the, I've got an engine over in North Carolina right now, and the guy is ceramic coating
Yes.
pistons. And in my
I've experimented with that stuff, but I haven't found any
that work really well.
net advantage at the end of the day.
Okay.
So quite often stuff that works in modern engines doesn't necessarily
Work in old.
I've seen guys that build these rocket ships, be drag cars. Drag guys are interested in quarter of a mile. That's all they got to do. Time.
Yeah, they're going to rebuild that motor tomorrow.
And
Anyway.
they build some great material on these cylinders. I think it's ductile if I remember right. But
Right.
the thing is, it retains a lot of heat. It's strong, and people think, oh, that's great. I'll make it out of that. But it retains a lot of heat, so you got to get heat in, and you got to get heat out through all these fins.
So what you're looking for is longevity. Obviously,
Yeah.
because on a vintage bike, you're going to do this. Hopefully, just do this one time.
Yes.
I mean, that's your goal. So.
Yes. So the coatings are important. The other thing is wrist pins. Where's that ring that fell out?
Real quick, again, if you're on Facebook Live or you're just joining us here, we have Kiwi Mike from Kiwi Indian right here in California. He is the preeminent parts supplier and restorer of Indian motorcycles really around the world. He's very well respected everywhere. He's got 1,500 different parts. You can actually build a vintage Indian out of his catalog, and he's really given his life to this and is passionate about it. A testament to the fact that he can ride these bikes any place was that he rides them all the time. He does his R&D in Death Valley, 130 degrees. He's riding it. Heather Callan from Cycle Source Magazine has a video of his gas actually boiling in his tank. It was so hot. And what was funny is he actually ended up giving Chris and Heather rides because Chris was riding his modern Harley-Davidson. The belt broke. So on a 1948 Indian, Mike ended up giving them salvation rides, so they could get back to civilization. But Kiwi Mike's with us. And today he's talking to us about the process of rebuilding a flathead engine and some of the things that go into that. So we've covered a lot of stuff. We've just gone over pistons. We're getting ready to talk about wrist pins.
We are?
Yeah, we are. Well, you are.
So wrist pins, there's different style locks. There's little wire locks, and there's the old-fashioned snap ring, circlip type. There's actually a correct way to put these snap rings in. One side is actually punched down, and it's got radiuses on, so it doesn't actually have a sharp corner. And you always want to put it so that the radius side is in, because if anything, the wrist pin wants to come out. So the sharp edge of, this is not the snap ring for it, but I want to show a big enough one that you can actually see it, that it's got sharp edges on the other side. That's the side that you want to have out. And once you've got it in there, you want to always make sure that it's stuck in there securely. So get your pliers. This is actually sort of old-fashioned. They got wire ones now. But still, no matter what, make sure that that is in there really, really good. If that comes out, I mean, you're going to cost you a lot of money.
I did. I had my Road King. It's a bike I've owned the longest. Is a 97 Road King. I bought it in 98 with 800 miles on it. About 1,000 miles later, 1,800 miles on it, I actually had one of these fail. That wrist pin came out and took the whole motor out of that bike. And so that's you don't want that to happen. It's very expensive. Very expensive.
And plus all that grit goes through the motor, so now it's a grinding compound.
Oh.
It's not just a matter of replacing the top end.
It's everything.
It's gone through the whole bottom end.
It's gone through the whole bottom end and everything, so you're done.
So rings, there's different rings, different schools of thoughts on it. For the old flat, it's just a plain cast iron, non-surface treated ring is actually ends up being the best. Oil rings, you've got a single piece cast iron ring, which is like that, or you've got your multi-piece 3-piece ring. The thing is with a flathead is you've got splash lubrication. So things we do on Indians, you could go out, you could test this in a motor and go, yep, I got the perfect recipe. Now the guy has to put this into his old cylinders, and the composition is different than the new cylinders, or even the composition between one batch and another.
Right.
So that was one of the things I was battling for the longest time, is experiment with 3-piece oil rings. There's got to be low tension, so you reduce the tension, you get it to work, and it'll work great. Several motors. Then you go over to another one, and it doesn't last long. So it's just the things we're dealing with in the restoration. It's not like today where everything's controlled. The metals today, whether it be an S&S motor or a Harley motor, is very tightly controlled. So they're all going to be the same.
There are standards now where when these were being made, these are brand new stuff, so there were no standards. And
the worst of it is during World War II, they were not expecting any bike, I don't care if it's Harley or Indian, they were very long in the theater, the war environment. So the things are going to get blown up, ditched. So why build them real good?
Right.
It's just get that thing out of the road, out of the factory, at least last a little while. And, when it broke down, you just threw it over the side.
You know what amazes me, and I'm sure you've got a million stories like this. I've traveled across Europe, Eastern Bloc countries, in where the war theater was, and these guys you'll see guys that find these bikes from the war years, they push them out, they spray them off, they put fuel in them, they clean up the carburetors, and they fire and they ride them. It's just amazing. We want to poo-poo old technology all the time. These things were virtually indestructible. I mean, if you took care of them, they were tough.
You don't even really have to take care of them, because you look now, look, whether it be Indian and Harleys, how many old ones are still around?
Yeah, true.
It's not made of plastic.
Right.
So if it's made of steel, you can fix it. It's rebuildable.
I got a 1952 Dodge at the house with a flathead 6-cylinder in it. The motor was stuck. The guy said, it's no good. It's going to need a new motor. I pulled the head off of it, and sure enough, the pistons were stuck in it, so I took a rubber mallet and I beat on the pistons until they moved. I put a new head gasket on it, and I'm still driving the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this technology from then really was pretty tough.
Flatheads are really, really resilient.
Right.
Sort of not too worried about clearances like valve to guide clearance.
It fits in there, so it's...
No, like on an Indian, it's about 3,000ths of an inch, 3 to 4,000ths of an inch. Well, in a modern engine, that is totally worn out. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the difference between guys like myself and the old guy. You know, the guys that got the experience of doing this stuff, but somebody knows a Harley mechanic, yeah, he'll build my motor, or yeah, he builds NASCAR.
Oh, there's no way I'd let that go through.
And they'll tighten up all these tolerances, and it's going to fail within 7 miles. You know.
That's funny. Yeah.
So you actually got to take a step back. A little bit looser is better than making things too tight. These pistons that I make, you run around 3.5 thousandths clearance, measured about a ½ inch up from the bottom of the skirt.
And I see these have STD stamped on them. That's who manufactures
No,
them?
that's a standard. This is standard
Okay, I
size.
didn't know. All right, standard
And it's
size.
actually, my ones have got a arrow on them, which way it points forward.
Now, do you manufacture these in-house
Yes.
then?
No,
Okay.
I don't manufacture them in house. I did all the design work,
Okay.
prototyping, testing, and then I sent them out to a production house to do it. So, you know, it's piston actually looks round. It's anything but round. It's actually oval because the greatest expansion is here. So you're actually going to make this diameter here smaller, maybe by about 20 thousandths. Depends on the design, the engine design, and the application. But I figured out it's about 20 thousandths ovality. And then also it's tapered. So this is larger at this end and smaller at this end by about 7 thousandths. So it's smaller here because you're generating a lot of heat up here. And it goes down through the piston. This is where a lot of the material is. So that's where it's actually going to have your greatest expansion. But people just quite often worry about clearance at the bottom. You don't have to worry about my pistons because I've already figured that in, but you should always check how much tape is in a piston. Most of you know, if you're dealing with good quality suppliers, they're going to be on it, so you don't have to check it.
Again, quality parts is going to give you a quality result. If you're going to shop in price, that's good. You're going to get to buy 2 of them.
Well, that's the
probably.
problem with, you know, you're looking at catalogs, looking at my catalog and somebody else's.
How can you tell the quality? I mean,
But that doesn't really come into play with a lot of people. You don't get that opportunity.
Right.
They're looking on a website and going, okay, $15.99 and $9.99. Look the same thing.
might want to ask the question why there's a price difference.
Most people don't.
Yeah, but you want to. Yeah, you need to.
But what does the supplier tell you? Oh, it's good quality. So what I do, which separates myself out from everybody else, I show that on my website that I ride Indians everywhere. I mean, that's my latest model bike is a 1953. So if I got to go to New York on a road run or something, I ride my bike. And that's the only thing I got.
That's
You know,
awesome.
usually I ride my 1948 or I got a 1945, 44.
Sounds like
And
you have too many. You could send one to Iowa. I'll ride it around. Yeah, you could do that.
Kelderman will help you out.
Kelderman. Oh, I've got that Indian in my shop now.
That's
I
right.
really appreciate that. That's why I'm paying attention really close.
So
He sold a good. We got a friend in common, Jeff Kelderman, Kelderman Manufacturing, and he sold him it's a 40.
sold you get money.
Oh.
I haven't got any money.
You haven't got any money yet?
No,
So
I
Jeff
won't.
Kelderman stole an Indian, an old chopper from him, and now it's at my shop, and I work on Harley. So this, and I don't work on vintage that old. It's a 40. That's
48.
48, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be an interesting.
Oh, it's a
project.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right. So, valve springs. Valve springs. Once again, they all look the same. Just made of steel, right? No, actually, there's different grades of steel they're made out of. One of the things I've found is this is actually made exactly like the original. But with high lift cams, we call them Bonneville cams, they actually get to the point of coil bind. So whenever a spring collapses all the way and upon itself, that's bad. That's where fatigue will come in, or they'll actually break. Sort of like I can squeeze this little spring. So if you squeeze this little spring all the way down, that's bad. It actually gets to a compression point where it goes hard. That's bad. The spring should always have some gap in between each coil. So in order to do that, what I did is, once again, you're dealing with spring pressures. You've only got a certain amount of room that the spring sits in the valve cover. So I've got constraints upon that. So what I've figured out is I took 3/4 of a turn out of the spring. I've increased its rate a little bit, which is not a bad thing on these things. And now when I've got gap between all the springs. So that's good for all the guys that are, if you got a standard cams, it's no big deal. And everybody just runs that spring. So what I did is I come out, took that 3/4 of a turn out of it, and now I've got clearance in between each one of those coils under fully compressed with the high lift cams.
Right.
Valve covers. Another little important thing. It's got an O-ring in here. So it actually seals. You're actually going to push this valve cover up to do your tappets and down when you're actually done with that. And that's going to retain any oil. Flathead doesn't have a whole bunch of oil in there. But once again, that O-ring is orange. And that's a silicon O-ring. Everybody else puts a black one in, which is neoprene. And that's just your regular off-the-shelf. What we're dealing with here, we're dealing with heat, we're dealing with acids in oil. And the black ones, the neoprene ones, break down, especially over here on the exhaust.
Right.
They settle over time. Well, it's just, like these ones probably about 10 times more, but it's still, we're talking cents.
Yeah.
But no,
But still, people, I know that, and there's a lot of shops that do it. When you're buying, in a shop's buying supplies, it's a couple of cents for that. But when you start buying them in bulk, people will go for the cheaper one instead of looking for what it's actually going to do. If you look in modern transmissions, you see virtually no black O-rings in them. They're all going to be silicon, O-rings.
So that's a heck of a good upgrade to do. Plus, they slide in and out real easy.
Right.
And it's a bitch if you're doing valve covers and you got the black ones and you're trying to push that thing up from new. After a few miles, the heat and the acids in the oil.
Because they're wearing out. They're breaking down. Yeah.
Next thing you know, you got a oil leak. Another little added thing we've put on is a valve stem seal. They didn't originally have that. It's actually good to put on the intake. The exhaust doesn't get a whole bunch because basically all your oil is down here. And it's got to come up through a push rod guide. It's a little bit that does get up there. The intake has a vacuum, so it's actually pulling a little bit of oil up. Where the exhaust, you've got exhaust gases.
They just told us we're out of time.
Oh, okay. Good. So
I have a microphone now, and so do you.
So we're pretty well covered on that. So,
but so I think the bottom line for me is if I ever, like this motor that I've got there in the shop now, I'm just going to send it to Kiwi Indian. There is so much to think about. I think it's fascinating that with this you go backwards with technology a lot of times in restorations, that you try to bring it up to modern standards and tolerances and stuff. You've actually made a huge mistake. So when you're doing restoration work on an engine, you really need to consult some professionals. You might be the best builder of modern engines that there is in your area, but when it comes to a vintage engine, it's worth the time to do some consulting.
What you're doing with the old engines is it's like an archaeological dig. It's 80 years or 100 years of old stuff that's gone on, problems. Other people try to fix it or haven't fixed it or done damage themselves. So, you're actually, you're not just pulling stuff apart, you're actually studying every single part as you tear it down. Because it's amazing the amount of stuff that you do find.
All right. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, Kiwi Indian, which will be KIWI, and then the word Indian.com, KiwiIndian.com. Or you can find me by phone, Riverside, California. I do a lot of vintage, I do a lot of tech videos, so people can actually go through this. You don't have to call up and sort of try and understand it. I actually do a video of different processes, whether it be changing your oil, adjusting your points, doing your timing. So I do it for the common person that they can actually follow it. So it's nice and easy.
So if you have a vintage Indian or motorcycle in general, or you're just kind of interested in the history of that, Kiwi Indian Motorcycle is an excellent resource for you. Mike, thank you so much. I know we're out of time, but I'm going to tell one story about this man. It meant the world to me. When I was about 8 years old, I was digging around in a garage with my toe in the dirt. My dad had me out there, and it was at his friend's shop, and all the oil had compressed the dirt. It was all caked down, and I was kicking around, and I kicked this shiny thing, and it popped up, and I asked the guy if I could have it, and he said, definitely, and it was an Indian horn cover. And I started, because of that, I started getting into motorcycles and looking at it, and I went and cleaned it up, and I hung it on above my headboard on my bed, and it stayed with me. Every time, my dad was a Methodist preacher, so we moved every time the light bill came due. And but it stayed there with me. I went to college, hung it above my bed. I was there about 2 weeks, and somebody stole it. And it seemed insignificant, but to me it was like, man, that was my connection, my first connection to motorcycles ever. And I told him that story. He doesn't even remember it, at V-Twin Expo in Cincinnati when that was a thing. And and I had a booth set up there, and I came back the next day. I told him that story about that horn cover, and he had one sitting there. He'd given me that Indian horn cover, and it's still hanging in my shop today. So, man, I appreciate it. Every time I look at that, I think of you, and I remember you reconnected me with that first little bit of motorcycle history that I got in touch with. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Kiwi Mike, Kiwi Indian Motorcycle Company.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Grease and Gears Garage, appreciate your time. We thank J&P Cycles, the largest aftermarket distributor of aftermarket motorcycle parts in the world. And come back and see us later. Check the schedules. We got Chris Richardson coming up in a little bit to narrow a tank with us right here on stage, Grease and Gears Garage.